Millionaire Pat Toomey, he's fighting for jobs. In China, after working on Wall Street, Toomey moved to Asia to work for a Hong Kong billionaire who wanted to help the Chinese economy. And in Congress, Toomey voted to give China special trade status. Toomey's vote for China helped cost us 2.4 million jobs. Job killer Pat Toomey. Maybe he ought to run for Senate in China. The Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Congressman Rob Portman knows how to grow the economy. In China, he voted for billions in tax breaks for companies that export jobs. On his watch as Bush's trade czar, our deficit with China exploded, sending 100,000 Ohio jobs overseas. As Bush's budget chief, Portman oversaw a spending spree that doubled the deficit. Outsourcing, bad trade deals, soaring deficits. Congressman Portman, a real economic plan, but not for Ohio.
I'm Lee Fisher, and I approve this message.
I'm Spike Maynard, and I approve this message.
It's on our jeans, even children's toys, made in China. As part of the Obama-Pelosi team, Ray Hall voted for a bill that led to billions in tax breaks for foreign companies creating Chinese jobs. Ray Hall's vote helped foreign companies create Chinese jobs making windmills. With skyrocketing unemployment, only a politician who's been in Washington 34 years would vote to help foreign companies create Chinese jobs making windmills.
Is Barron Hill running for Congress in Indiana or China? Barron Hill supported the $800 billion failed stimulus package that created renewable energy jobs in China. His big spending programs will force us to keep borrowing money from, you guessed it, China. So Hill's creating massive new debt here, while he created renewable energy jobs over there. Barron Hill, for Indiana or China? We fired him once. The National Republican Congressional Committee is responsible for the content of this advertising.
I'm Scott Murphy, and I approve this message.
Another Chris Gibson attack. Again, he's wrong. Scott Murphy's a businessman who's working to reduce the deficit to improve the economy. Chris Gibson signed a pledge to keep every single special interest tax break. And Chris Gibson supports more tax cuts for the wealthy, adding $700 billion to the deficit, more tax burden on the middle class, and more debt to China. Chris Gibson, jobs for China, not upstate New York.
Mike McIntyre needs to be held responsible. McIntyre and Nancy Pelosi spent billions on a stimulus program that was supposed to create jobs. But while our unemployment remains high, a report shows that up to 80% of stimulus clean energy grants went to create new jobs in countries like China. Since McIntyre and Pelosi teamed up, our unemployment increased 61%. Mike McIntyre, jobs in China, not in North Carolina. The National Republican Congressional Committee is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Congressman Shower on TV.
I must ask myself 10 times a day, what is Washington thinking?
Great question, Congressman. What were you thinking when you voted for Nancy Pelosi's national energy tax that could send American manufacturing jobs to China? What were you thinking, Congressman Shower, when you voted for the failed stimulus bill, creating thousands of jobs overseas?
What is Washington thinking?
Congressman Shower, what were you thinking? The National Republican Congressional Committee is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Is Nancy Pelosi right over 90% of the time? That's how often Zach Space voted with her, including the $800 billion failed stimulus. Space said it was working, but unemployment has shot up 10%. While the stimulus created renewable energy jobs in China, it created mountains of new debt back here. Zach Space, staggering debt here, sending jobs to China. Who's he working for? The National Republican Congressional Committee is responsible for the content of this advertising.